Hello everyone, welcome to the Town Manager Download, a podcast about local government in the town of Shrewsbury. During today's episode, we're going to cover the Shrewsbury public drinking water system, including improvements that we've made over the years and the plans that the town has for the future when it comes to our water system. We'll be joined by Deanne Riley, Superintendent of Water and Sewer. I'm Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager of the town of Shrewsbury, and as always, I'm joined by Communications Coordinator Taylor Galusha. Taylor, welcome to Season 2 of the Town Manager Download.
We made it.
We made it. Season 2, our contracts were renewed for this
We didn't get
endeavor.
caught or recast.
That's right. So we're going to be making a few minor changes to the podcast on the days that they launch to try to keep things the content a little more fresh, just shorten the lead cycle. So hopefully that works out better for us as we pursue things over the course of the year. But happy to be in fiscal year 24 and moving forward with the strategic plan, the Town Manager Download, and a number of other initiatives that we'll be working our way through over the course of the next few months. So
Fun stuff planned as projects that started last year start to wrap up. So got some good content coming.
What's been happening outside of Shrewsbury for you?
Well, we had the 4th of July weekend 2 weeks ago. Nothing has happened since that. I went hiking up at the Purgatory State Reservation. I think it's in Sutton. That was super fun. Saturday morning activity. No, I didn't, because I know how to read and follow a trail sign, which is just colors. So I guess you don't need to know how to read to follow a trail.
If you can see colors.
Oh, you'd probably have some trouble.
I would get lost. I would get lost.
I also got to stop by the Shrewsbury Country Shop, had like a small business event that weekend as well. They had like a free gelato stand outside, lots of cute stuff in the store. So it was nice supporting local business in my off time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just hung out, summer activities.
It's been hot.
It has been hot and swampy.
Yeah.
What about you?
Lots of rain.
Yes.
We took the big trip down to Disney. We were down there for several days. Got to spend time with my kids and wife Erin, and my kids' dance studio went down and they spent time with some Disney dance instructors, which my girls loved a lot because they talked about how they worked their way into being a Disney cast member and performer. And then we actually saw the gentleman that was their teacher on the big stage at the Magic Kingdom.
Oh, wow.
Afternoon performance. So it was pretty cool. So they got to perform at the Disney Springs stage, and it was interesting being down there with having a lot of their friends there. That's not something that, you're used to seeing people out and about and around, but it was really cool for them to be able to go on rides and do things. And
Did you get ditched?
Nope, because I'm the virtual cube master. So if you wanted to ride Tron or Guardians of the Galaxy, you had to stick with Dad. So
That's the way to keep
your,
them.
You got to keep your power positions well in play. So Ella celebrated her 14th birthday a couple days ago, so another fun birthday celebration for her after we got back. So things have been pretty good, pretty summer-like. So I know you were a major contributor to a winner of a loser's bracket in kickball, so why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I play kickball in my free time with one of my coworkers in the TM office. We play in Worcester with the Club Waka program, and it's honestly a lot of fun. I didn't think I could have this much fun playing kickball past like middle school. So no, it's a good time, good exercise, lots of fun people. We actually played in a tournament this weekend in Worcester, and I managed to cleat myself. So I have a big bruise on my leg from trying to catch a
You don't
ball.
have to share everything here,
Yeah, well, I can embarrass myself a little bit, just humanize.
Yeah.
But no, super fun.
Yeah. So I was out for a while, a week or so, but what's been going on in the Shrew?
So much has been going on in the Shrew. No summer lull here. We had the farmers market that kicked off a few weeks ago every Wednesday at the senior center in the parking lot from 2:30 to 6:30. It's been fun walking around after work. It's our normal like office tradition to go check out all the vendors and just hang out, which is nice, and just a nice little stroll after work. We had the food trucks on Thursdays, which another office tradition, just to go check out the food trucks, 4 to 8, and that's always super fun seeing everybody hanging out in front of town hall with their picnic blankets and kids playing frisbee and everything. So I don't know, just good vibes outside of town hall on Thursdays. The town also transitioned to a new billing system for residents to pay their tax bills and their water and sewer bills through the City Hall Systems platform. Residents can access it through multiple ways, either through hot buttons on the homepage on the website or just visiting shrewsburyma.gov/ebilling. People need to re-sign up for their auto pay that they used to use through Unipay, but I've played around with the system a little bit, trying to set things up, and it seems pretty easy to navigate, and I think having everything in one convenient place will make residents' lives a lot easier. They can pay over the phone now, which is a question we get all the time via credit card. So lots of new conveniences for residents in that area.
Yeah, there will be some enhancements over our prior online payment portal. You'll be able to do more. You'll be able to see more data and information. We'll be moving to more of an account-based system, so you can access historical information about your property and actually sign up for e-billing completely. The select board voted for that, so it is an option for residents to no longer receive certain bills in the mail. So residents can explore that. I know it's pretty much going where people already are from how we conduct business. We're happy to do that through this new platform, and I think it'll be a good new initiative. But it isn't really important. I think the biggest thing to emphasize from your comments, Taylor, is that folks will need to re-sign up if they had auto pay or something like that. So it's a whole new portal, a whole new system, and please go to shrewsburyma.gov/ebilling to re-engage with us on that platform, and hopefully send us your feedback or let us know your experience with it.
Yep. And while you weren't out for the first one, but did a few presentations with the select board regarding the communication strategic plan on the June 13th, and then we provided a town side of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging update at the June 27th meeting at the beginning. So both pretty informational presentations, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
And just kind of keeping residents up to date on just the work we've been doing behind the scenes. And lastly, but not least importantly, our new episode drop day will be Thursdays. So every other Thursday instead of every other Tuesday. Again, just to improve that turnaround time.
Right, so we'll be recording Mondays and dropping Thursdays rather than, we're bringing things to folks more promptly.
Yep. Shout out Mark.
And not leastly.
Not leastly.
That's right. All right, so we have a lot to talk about. It's always a really in-depth matter for residents of Shrewsbury. When we talk about water quality, we've made a lot of changes, a lot of improvements over the years. We're going to dive into history and overview and things like that, and then we'll have our guest. It's been a while since we've had a guest, so we'll be nice to our guest today.
We will.
All right. So Shrewsbury's been in the water business for quite some time. We've had a municipal-owned water utility. We are servicing nearly every resident, but not all residents. There are certainly a handful of properties in town that still are serviced by a private well, but we have over 11,000 service connections and over 200 miles of water mains in the community. So we put a lot of resources and have a really dedicated and skilled set of professionals that manage our water system on a day-to-day basis. So we really look to dive in this conversation today and talk about the things that we've done recently with the water system and where we're headed in the future. Something that's really in the national news maybe way more often than it should be, but we have a lot of responsibility in providing clean drinking water, and you hear about it all the time across the news, the national news, about communities that struggle with doing that. Fortunately, we're not one of them, but that's why we have to invest and make the improvements that we always do, and it's something that's really important to us and has been in the community forever, since we started in the early 1900s. So I look forward to this conversation and having Dan rally and to talk about these things.
Yeah, we've made like a lot of improvements over the last several years. I think I would say the kickoff point of that was probably the home farm water treatment plant in 2018 when it was finished being built. But obviously that project started a few years before the plant was able to open. The water division has worked hard on putting the unidirectional flushing program on a reoccurring schedule, and they completed their first round, I think, in the end of 2021, which was super exciting for them. And I know they went through the same exercises with the flushing program this past spring. We always replace a certain amount of water main each year. It's something Mr. Rowley will be able to talk about a little bit more in detail. And then looking towards the future, we have the PFAS plant, water treatment plant, that will be another treatment improvement that we're making. So kind of continuing to take care of our infrastructure and doing what we need to maintain what we have.
So we've talked a lot about the town manager, select board, selectman form of government that we have in Shrewsbury. And it's really interesting to me because in 1953, when that legislation was passed as the charter or governance model for Shrewsbury, nearly everything that had been kind of in default providing in governance to the select board was really parceled out to the town manager or the select board or another body, versus other communities where in the absence of addressing something through a charter or other special legislation, everything in default stays to the select board. So what I find interesting is that the select board at the time reserved the right to being the water commissioner to themselves. And that's really one of the only things that remained under the general executive in their purview. So we have our own sewer commission and, Board of Health obviously is standalone, where in a lot of other, Light Commission and a lot of other communities, more than one of those things have remained under the control or the authority of the select board. So, but here in Shrewsbury, the select board has retained the road commissioner and water commissioner responsibilities. So that means the elected executive has the final authority, of course, well supported by Dan and his staff and DPW team, in setting water rates and making the major investment decisions and ensuring the operation of the water system. So ultimately that falls to the select board, but I mean, that was the main point that I wanted to, keep in play here, was that the board at that time, even though they're parceling out most of the rest of the responsibilities for the community, retain that special authority as water commissioners for themselves, which I think, given the matters that we're going to face and we have faced and how complex they are, that feels right to me, and how they managed that and kept that authority. So we'll talk a little bit more about how things work on a day-to-day basis as we move forward. But I think it's probably just good to have Dan come in and begin the conversation with him about how we operate the water system and what it means to be a water and sewer superintendent.
Yeah, and I'll plug before that we still take resident questions and topic ideas from, with season 2 starting. We gotta solicit more ideas and questions from the community. Those can be emailed to tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. We've received a few emails over the last few months, but we'd love to hear what you all want to hear us talk about as we move our way through all the different departments and everything. It'll be good to see what residents are missing or want to hear about.
Yeah, any department, any topic, we're willing to entertain it. Speaking of entertaining, we'll bring the ever lively Dan Rowley into the Town Manager Download. So we're happy to welcome into the studio Dan Rowley, Superintendent of Water and Sewer. Dan, welcome to the Town Manager Download.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're happy to have you and dive into one of the most widely discussed topics in town, which is water. We really have the ability to serve nearly every resident in town through our water system with over 11,000 different service connections. And obviously, one of the most important things that we do for the public health and safety of the community is provide a reliable drinking water source. So we're really excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So what we like to do with every guest on the episode is just talk about your career path into local government, how long you've been with the town, how did you find your way into this career path, and any advice that you may have for anyone who might be interested.
So that's a great question. I would say my career path into local government is by chance.
Okay.
Simply because my first job in high school, I was working for the now closed Whalen Park, working in the grounds department, and just grew a love of construction and grounds. And through college, I worked for a landscaper, graduated in 2001 with a bachelor's degree in management leadership, and was just applying for jobs and happened to apply to the town of Townsend as a Parks and Cemetery foreman, and was given that job and was there for several years. Moved over to the water department in Townsend for a bit of time, and then an opportunity in Shrewsbury opened up back in 2005. And I spent about 10 years with the town of Shrewsbury, working as a Parks and Cemetery foreman and then the highway foreman, before taking a little leave to go to the town of Concord to be the highway and grounds superintendent, and then was very excited in 2019 when the water and sewer superintendent opportunity opened up, and I was given the chance to come back to Shrewsbury.
Yeah, that's great. So talk a little bit about your team that you work with here in Shrewsbury on a day-to-day basis. How many employees do you have? Who do you report to? Who's on your leadership team? All those good things.
Sure. So under the DPW umbrella, I report to Jeff Howland, the DPW director. And as a superintendent, I have two assistant superintendents. I have Joe Kenny, who is our assistant superintendent of operations, who oversees the day-to-day operations of the water and wastewater systems out throughout the town. And then I have an assistant superintendent for the treatment plant, who is solely responsible for the treatment plant, the water storage tanks, and the boosters. We have one water treatment plant operator who is the key person in also running the treatment plant and keeping that running. And then we have a number of field staff broken out into water technicians who are more licensed individuals. We have 3 at that level. And then we have 8 water and sewer laborers who are anywhere from entry level to a handful of years of experience working and getting licenses. We have one engineering field inspector who helps oversee our construction projects, a program manager who assists in supporting all the different programs that we have. And then we also are supported by the business management division of DPW, who works with us on all of the service calls that come in, helping those get out to the field staff, billing, all the service requests that we have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we have a highly knowledgeable audience that listens to the Town Manager Download all the time. I just wanted to clarify. So treatment plants, we have a water treatment plant that we operate ourselves. So when you're referring to treatment plant, is that what you're referring to?
Solely drinking water.
Okay.
Yes, solely drinking water. All of our wastewater, we have a collection system with 38 sewer pump stations and 165 miles of main. The most of the flow goes to the regional facility in Westboro.
Okay.
And then we do have a bit of flow from the Route 20 corridor and the upper northwestern corner of the town that go to the Upper Blackstone treatment facility. The town of Shrewsbury had a wastewater treatment plant up until the 1980s before it closed and then sent the flow outside of town.
Interesting. So sewer sounds like a completely separate episode, so we'll see if we can work out a contract for you to come back and talk sewer one time.
Love to.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll stick to water today. So I know Shrewsbury's been in the water business for a long time. Do you know exactly when we started?
1905.
1905.
Yes.
Okay, so that even predates Selco, I believe.
It may.
Yeah, by a couple of years predates Selco. So the first major utility was water for the town, and here we are today with that crew of employees and yourself that service, all the residents within the community. So talk a little bit about the system, Dan. Generally speaking, how much in water mains, how many miles of water mains do we have? How does the system operate?
So Shrewsbury has a fairly complex water system. We have one water treatment plant in the northwest corner of town, 8 gravel pack wells that all go through that treatment facility before entering the distribution system. And given the topography of Shrewsbury, we have 3 different pressure zones, which are driven by the elevation of the town. And we have 3 booster stations that will take water from our low elevation area, our low service area, and we'll move it into what we call the reduced high and the high. And we have 6 water storage tanks. We can store just about 6 million gallons of water. And we have a little over 200 miles of main and 11,563 service connections, serving about 95% of the town with town water.
So how much water is that on the average day?
So it depends on the seasonal demand. This time of year with the rain, which certainly helps keep the demand down, we average somewhere around 4.1 to 4.2 million gallons of water. When we get into the winter time and the spring season, before temperatures rise, we're probably in the neighborhood of 3.6 to 3.7 million gallons of water a day.
Okay. So let's talk about the treatment plant itself. So we have a really modern new facility that's located in town, northwest corner of the town. That water treatment plant has been in place since 2018. Is that the first treatment plant that we've had within the community, or when?
So that is the second treatment plant we had. We had one built in the early 1990s, and the objective of that treatment plant was to remove VOCs from the water, which were an issue back then that have since relieved themselves.
Okay.
And at that time, they were chlorinating with chlorine gas and adjusting the pH with KOH and fluoridating in that treatment plant.
Okay. And now the 2018 treatment plant was set up for a completely different reason. Is that right?
So it now includes biologically removing manganese, which was an issue for the town for many years. And so through a series of 4 pressure vessels or big containers or big
Vats.
that's the water is filtered and the manganese is removed to non-detect levels.
Okay, so when you say biological, does that mean there's live organisms actually within those vessels?
Yes, that is right.
Interesting.
And they oxidize the manganese into a solid form that can be filtered through a granular filter.
Yeah, I know whenever I first started in 2017, and then up until we got this treatment plant up and operating and started to do unidirectional flushing, we had a lot of water quality issues from an appearance standpoint. It, certainly it was safe to drink, but was often discolored. And with this really modern approach, I know that we've been very successful in removing the manganese and through unidirectional flushing, eliminating it from our distribution system. So what else happens at that treatment plant?
So in addition to removing the manganese, we also adjust the pH with potassium hydroxide. We fluoridate, we disinfect with sodium hypochlorite, and we add a liquid polyphosphate for corrosion control.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds pretty complicated, like a lot of chemistry is involved. What do the operators do down there on a day-to-day basis?
So there's a number of different tests they have to run on the water every day. And we also, in addition to their work, we also have inline analyzers that around the clock monitor the entire operation of the treatment plant, and through a computerized system will alert operators if there's an issue. But our folks will they will run tests for the pH, a chlorine residual, fluoride residual, and then just keep a very close eye on the operation of the plant. The filters that we use for the manganese removal do need to be backwashed, and that's done. It's initiated manually. One of the operators does that, but it's an automated system.
Okay. So are you familiar with did you ever work in the prior treatment plant?
No, I did not.
I was in there like one time. I remember it being completely different than the current plant,
Yeah.
how it looks and feels, and of course what it is that we do there. So it's a really modern facility. We have a major solar array out in front of it, which I know helps reduce the climate impact of it. Any details on that?
It does. It generates about a third of a month of energy over the course of a year. That was built on the existing, the former treatment plant foundation as a way to minimize construction debris by taking that foundation out. It was just capped, and then the solar array was made to fit in there. So it's certainly that's helping to offset a little bit.
Interesting. So as we talked a little bit about whenever we brought the 2018 treatment plant online, the next major initiative to go along with our water quality improvement program was the unidirectional flushing program. So can you talk a little bit about what unidirectional flushing is and how that program has turned out?
Yes, so unidirectional flushing, unlike traditional flushing where you just go open a hydrant where you think may be appropriate, it's an engineered program. So we have, the town was divided into 12 different zones, and we have books that show exactly how the mains need to be isolated. So crews will go out and close different valves in areas to get the water to go one direction through the system, and they typically will start at the largest mains and then work their way down to the smaller mains to get higher velocities. And in the end, you know that the area that you flushed is clean versus the traditional way you may or may not have removed whatever was in the lines. It's definitely a lot more labor intensive, but the ultimate payout I think is definitely worth it.
Sure.
Just seeing our results.
Yeah, the results have been remarkable. The number of water quality complaints that we have has, gone down. Not non-existent, but pretty close to a comparison to what we were dealing with in 2019 and even the early part of 2020 before your team took this initiative on. So we talked about where we get the water from the gravel-packed wells. It gets treated at the treatment plant and then put out through the distribution system. What else gets done behind the scenes that residents might be interested in when it comes to the water system?
So there's a lot of different things that our staff does that I don't know everybody is aware of. Our operations staff in Shrewsbury, we own the piece of the service for residential homes from the main to the curb stop, and so with 11,500 of those connections, we have a crew that is repairing those on a constant basis. And that seems to take up a bit of time. We also, any new connections for water and sewer as well as repairs are all permitted through our online permitting system, and our field staff will go out and actually inspect the work that is done to ensure it meets our specifications. We also conduct quarterly billing. So every month we actually will read the whole town, but we bill a quarter. So we have staff that does that. We have a number of real estate transactions on any given day in Shrewsbury. So we have staff that will go out and get a final reading from a remote final reading from the meter, and then our business management staff will develop the final bill for the closing. We also do a fair amount of marking out of our utilities for contractors that are working in town. And so staff will go out and locate water sewer lines and mark them out. And with a complex system, we have 38 sewer pump stations that have to be checked every single day. So that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Someone will go out, physically inspect the station, listen for any noises, make sure it's functioning, track hours to make sure that the stations are operating properly. And same thing on the water side, where we have the booster stations need to be checked every day to make sure the pumps are functioning properly, and they do a physical check of the tanks as well. So quite a bit going on that you don't see.
Yes, certainly quite a bit going on, and occasionally things can go wrong. And during the week of June 26th, we had a pretty significant issue that you and your team had to tackle associated with one of our drinking water wells. What can you tell us about that situation?
So our 6.5 well is our...
I was on vacation, so you can get me up to speed.
Yeah, certainly. So our 6.5 well, top producing well, we can put out about 2,000 gallons a minute from that well. And back in October, we actually had a check valve in that well that went. And at that time, it was recommended to us to think about having a spare motor on the shelf because of the long lead times. And we've been working hard with 2 replacement wells one at Home Farm and one at Sewell. And it just so happens that the new well coming online at Home Farm will be this week or early next week, which will afford us the capacity to be able to not to have to rely on that well quite as much. So, but with that well going down, we were able to bring a well contractor in. And what we learned is the motor that we had purchased to replace the one that was in the ground, the coupling was much different, and it took us some time to work through getting the new coupling. In the meantime, we were able to get a spare motor and pump from the well company to give us 450 gallons a minute. So we were able to make 3.9 billion gallons of water a day, and it just wasn't quite enough as we worked through those repairs. So at that point, we decided that we wanted to open the interconnect with Worcester, which is down on Route 20 and designed to do exactly what it did, just to provide water to us in the event of an emergency. In this instance, it was just a good, I think, test for the select board, all of the key leadership in the town manager's office, my staff, where it wasn't necessarily a critical emergency. We just wanted to have our tanks, give our tanks a little bit more water to ensure that we had enough supply for the town. So it's good to work through it. The city of Worcester was fantastic to work with, and we were very careful, and we only opened it about 15%. But again, we were just looking for a few 100,000 gallons of water a day just to offset our need. So
now, is this really what I have in my brain, what it actually is? So the city of Worcester's water main infrastructure and the town of Shrewsbury's water main infrastructure are connected, probably with some level of separation between several valves, and you're able to just literally open that and move water one way or another. Is that right? So
it can only be moved from Worcester to Shrewsbury because their pressure is 20 to 30 pounds or more higher than ours. So you're exactly correct. There's 3 valves. There's also a meter vault. So it's a metered connection. And so those 3 valves need to be opened to allow water to flow into Shrewsbury.
Interesting. So we were pretty successful in doing that. We're able to replenish our system during that time.
And we certainly were within a day, and then we were able to get the replacement motor in, the coupling made, and everything that needed to happen.
And now we're at the time period where we're almost ready to bring that new well online.
We are. We're getting very close. The pump and motor went in last Friday. They tested it today. And there's a few other things they need to do before it gets final DEP authorization to be activated.
That's great. So residents can, I guess, at this point, rest assured that we have a continued stable water supply, and we're already in the process of addressing that well, and it looks like it came up a week or 2 short from what we needed it to be.
Sometimes it's the way.
Yeah, that's how it happens. But well, thanks for all your work on that and keeping the water flowing literally to the residents. So, as things continue to get more complex and our scientific capability improves as far as what we can test and detect within the drinking water supply, we're learning a lot about how good humans are at contaminating the earth and things like that. So we've had a number of emerging contaminants be brought to the attention of the town that in some way influence or a part of our drinking water system here in Shrewsbury. So I think it was in 2016 or 2015 sometime, hexavalent chromium at very minuscule levels was detected because of the town participating in kind of what's it called, an emerging contaminants?
Unregulated
contaminants.
UCMR.
Yeah. So, I mean, that means that the town is voluntarily testing more than we actually need to just to better understand our drinking water system. So we had that test, and then in 2019, was it? PFAS was identified in our drinking water system as part of a statewide testing initiative. So maybe you can talk about those emerging contaminants and unregulated contaminants and what we've done and what we will be doing in the future to keep our drinking water safe.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the hexavalent chromium was part of the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule, I think 3 back in 2015, where that was a test that was done and it was detected at low levels. And we've gone ahead, we've monitored since then. We haven't seen significant changes, and just to be proactive, we went ahead and pilot tested in the event that we needed to implement a treatment system. But at this point, the levels haven't risen enough to consider that. They're staying status quo. Mm-hmm. PFAS, we've seen a lot of change in the last 5 or 6 years. That was also under a UCMR. At the time, it was only detectable to micrograms per liter, parts per billion. Mm-hmm. And what's changed is it's now, since 2019, maybe 2018 late, it can be detected down to parts per trillion, nanograms per liter. So in the summer of 2019, Shrewsbury volunteered to be one of a handful of communities to test their water for PFAS. And it was detected, and at the time there was really no regulation. There was a standard of 70 parts per trillion, and Shrewsbury was well below that. And then what's happened over the last few years, the Mass DEP has developed their regulation, which is the sum of 6 compounds they've identified at 20 parts per trillion, and Shrewsbury's been below that consistently. We fluctuate depending on the month up to maybe 16 parts on a couple months, all the way down to 8 parts. So we've been consistently below the 20. What changed very recently is the EPA has a proposed regulation which could take effect in the late fall or by the end of the year is what they're saying. And they have a little bit different approach where they've identified PFAS and PFOA, and they've put a limit of 4 parts per trillion independently for those compounds, and then there's a hazard index for 4 other compounds. So while we meet the Mass DEP regulations, the EPA standard we won't, and we miss it just by a little bit. I think we're probably 5 parts per trillion. So we've gone ahead to be proactive and really shifted gears to put the pieces in place that we need to start designing a treatment plant and then subsequently building a treatment plant in anticipation of that, the regulation taking effect.
So Dan, to a layperson like me, how do you describe a part per trillion? How is that normally conveyed?
And so there's a lot of different ways that folks say it's a couple drops in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. I always look at it and say you have $1 trillion in the bank and you take, I don't know, $15, $20 out to buy coffee. Mm-hmm. And you think of just how little that is with your $1 trillion in the bank.
Right. I don't have $1 trillion in the bank, for the record.
But $20 out of that, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting way to think about it as well. Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's an awful small amount, but obviously we're using the standards that are set by the federal government and the state government to ensure the ongoing public health. And just wanted to commend you for your efforts in investigating that and finding a solution for it, because I think we're out ahead of where many communities are, even with PFAS. So it's a well-known challenge that nearly every public drinking water and private drinking water system is facing or will be facing, and I think we're ahead of the curve in comparison to most of our municipal colleagues out there. So what do you see on the next 2 to 3 year horizon for that PFAS treatment plant?
So we expect to go into design. We're starting preliminary design just right now, just to look at the existing facility, what we have for room around the building to add, and then I see over the next year doing the design and going out to bid, and then construction starting in the following few years. So probably FY25 and 26 for construction. And we're hoping that we're out ahead of it to at least mitigate as much as possible any supply chain issues, recognizing that a lot of folks will need to build plants.
Yeah. What will that look like? Something similar to what we physically have in place already?
Our existing treatment plant will stay in place. We'll be using the filters for the manganese, and then this will be in addition to the treatment train where it will go into filters for the PFAS before going into the distribution system. So it'll be another addition to the building we have.
And so we're talking about construction of a new form of treatment kind of at the head end of our water system, but construction is really a part of your life and what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. You had mentioned earlier we have over 200 miles of water main, and how many pump stations on the water side?
3 booster stations.
3 booster stations and 6 holding tanks. That's a lot of physical infrastructure. So how do we plan for the replacement of that, and what are our major initiatives as we look to the future in just maintaining the existing system that we have?
So obviously with 200 miles of water main, we have an annual program to replace water main every year where we do between 1.5 and 2 miles of water main. We obviously like to do more, but it's costly. It's about $200 to $250 a foot. So that's an annual program, and we spend a lot of time looking at different needs, if there's any pressure issues or flow issues, and especially where we may be having water main breaks, multiple water main breaks where the mains that are in the ground we've identified as needing to be replaced. So, and then we've done what is called an above ground asset program, and we've had our booster stations looked at by our engineers, and we have a program to replace some of the pumps and to keep those going. And we have also inventory on our storage tanks. So we have the oak water storage tank that is in need of being rehabbed, which we plan to do in the next year.
Okay. So a lot on the horizon in addition to that expansion of the treatment plant itself. So always something going on. What's the department done recently, or what's the ongoing initiatives that you have with regards to water conservation and matters of sustainability, since that's always a topic that we think about with the strategic plan?
So that's been an ongoing effort since the mid-2000s of educating folks on the different plants that can be used, and we offer water reducing fixtures at the town halls. We have shower heads, we have hose repair kits, we have little gauges to measure rain. So it's good for 2 inches, so you do have to dump it, the way the weather's been, you have to empty it it seems like every day, at least, maybe once or twice. So, but then we're also really promoting the water use restrictions where folks, where the days they can water. And in particular, last year when we got into the drought, we, had to implement more restrictions, and residents were really good about adhering to those. So
interesting. So I guess the final area that I want to touch on is, we talked about the day-to-day operations and the testing that goes on at the treatment plant. How can residents learn more about our drinking water quality, and what reporting are you required to do, and when do you provide notice to residents, and how would they get that type of information if they're interested in it?
So every year we're required to provide a report. It's called a customer confidence report, and we have to issue it by the end of June. And once it's ready, we send a postcard out to all the residents with a direct link to the report. And in that, I start with a letter from me just talking about the year and the things we've done, and then it gets into some of the more specific, testing that we did through the year with the different parameters for them to review.
Okay. And so those are accessed all off of our website. Can you review that full report from there, or how does that work?
You can review it from there, or if you visit the second floor of the town hall, the DPW, we can get a paper copy to whoever would like one.
That sounds great. And so residents generally are able to access information from your website and sign up for email reports and follow social media if there's any emerging events that they would need to know. And I think your department's probably the greatest user of Code Red as far as notifying residents as if a water main break occurs, which it does, having 200 miles of main. So I think that's the details of the water system that we are really interested in going over and diving into today. And I just, again, want to commend you. I know you have a really technical job and technical staff, and we all work on a day-to-day basis to make our departments and divisions the best that we can and for the best local government in the world. So what makes the water division the best division in town?
I think it's the team that we have working for us, the support of all of the residents and businesses that we work with, throughout the year, and then obviously the support of the town manager's office, all of the town employees, and the select board. It's really a great community.
Yeah, it definitely is. Gotta echo that. So we love the best segment.
Yeah,
right? So
we haven't done the best in a while.
We haven't done the best. It's a special segment that we only bring out for our special guests. So we're going to throw you a curveball now, Dan.
Okay.
So what is the best summer cookout side dish?
Like you're grilling in your backyard. Like, what do you want?
What's your go-to
What do you
side?
want to have with your hamburger or your hot dog?
Oh, it's got to be a potato salad.
Oh.
Yeah, it has to have. Yeah, and I'm very open, but it has to be a potato salad. Absolutely.
What's your answer, Sam?
I was going to say potato salad too, but I'll
Really?
change it to not be lame. I like pasta salad, like any
Yeah.
kind of pasta salad. I'm there.
I'll go for just nice corn on the cob. I like that.
Do you grill it or do you boil it?
No, boil it. Yeah, I'm not that fancy, I'd
Sounds
probably
like a good
burn it.
cookout though,
Yeah.
between the 3 side dishes.
There's a lot of variety in the potato salad. What's the favorite for you, Dan? Anything special?
I'm open.
Yeah?
Yeah. All-
Surprise me.
variety.
All potato
Yep.
salad.
Yep.
Well, that's good. Well, Dan, this has been a lot of fun talking with you. We learned a lot about the drinking water system. We will have to have you back to talk about the sewer system, which is
Great.
a big part of what you do on a day-to-day basis as well. It's been a pleasure having you on here, and we will get you back in for those purposes. This has been a fun way to start season 2 of the Town Manager Download. If you have any questions or comments or program ideas for us, we're open. You can reach us at tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. So on behalf of Taylor Galusha, I'm Kevin Mizikar. Thank you for listening.